You've probably been living under a rock if you've not heard the words autumn budget at some point over the last couple of weeks. And today I'm going to be breaking down what that means for you and your personal finances. We're going to try and get this done in under 10 minutes because talking about government and policies is boring enough to get Stephen Hawking to stand up and walk out the room. And that's how you know it's boring, because Stephen Hawking is dead. I also know that most young people have the attention span of a goldfish with ADHD, so without further ado, let's get stuck in. First up, we're going to start with the good news. Okay, now on to the bad news, starting with personal taxes. In a nutshell, the taxes that you'll be paying through work or taxes on the day-to-day things that you buy are not going to change. But hold your celebrations. Income tax bands aren't going to be changing until 2028, meaning that as inflation goes up and your wages get higher, you're going to get pulled into higher tax brackets, meaning you'll pay more tax. You'll also end up paying more tax when you sell your assets, so things like your house and your stocks and shares. The government are also coming after pensioners' money, or hunting the dusty pound, by making pension pots liable to inheritance tax from 2027. This one is a real kick in the teeth for pensioners. Or kick in the dentures is probably a better way to put it. Pensioners are going to have to completely reconsider their spending habits if they want to leave their family a decent amount of money before they end up brown bread. But it's unclear how exactly these spending behaviours are going to change. Some pensioners may choose to reduce their spending, which has caused huge anxiety for the board members of Werther's Originals. Other pensioners may decide to increase their spending or give away more of their pension pots to reduce the tax burden for their next of kin. This is because with this new policy, people who end up inheriting their family's estates are more likely going to have to sell those assets just to foot the tax bill. From April 2025, employers are going to have to pay substantially more tax per employee. That's going to make a huge dent in companies' financial forecasts, and that money is going to have to be compensated somewhere. It's likely that one, companies are going to have to increase their prices, which means the customers, i.e. you, are going to have to pay more. Or two, it may be taken out of your pocket in the form of stunted pay rises or smaller bonuses. It may also mean that companies just don't have the funds to recruit new employees, meaning that there's a risk of reduction in job vacancies. Minimum wage is going to be increasing quite substantially for over 21s and for 18 to 20-year-olds. This is part of a long-term plan to move towards a single adult rate for minimum wage. And that's great, but I think it's fucking mental that younger people get given a fraction of what adults get paid for doing the same job. That's discrimination. Younger people are already fucked enough as it is with the economic future that they've got ahead of them. The way things are going, the young generation are probably going to have to work until their 80s, and most of them will never own a home because of the shit show economy that the government has provided for them. On the flip side, pensioners who, let me remind you, have grown up during the most economically prosperous generation in the history of mankind, will be getting a 4.1% increase to their state pension. I say fuck the wrinklies, don't fuck the kids. Philip, Hugh, that advice goes for you too. But to be fair, whilst a 4.1% increase may sound very generous, it's important to remember that the government recently scrapped the winter fuel allowance, which has basically taken money out of pensioners' pockets. So really, they kind of did have to put it up by that much, otherwise they would have ended up killing off all the pensioners. And yes, the previous Tory government were bad, but they were never pensioner genocide bad. Unless you count the 30,000 pensioners that died from COVID. The tax changes to our transport system are basically a list as to why this government are a bunch of wankers. There's going to be a 5p cut in fuel duty. Woohoo! Like that's going to make any difference to people's personal finances. Wankers. The £2 cap on single bus fares is going up to £3, which is a 50% tax rise, which is likely going to hit the poorest in our society the hardest. Wankers. The government are going to spunk hundreds of millions of pounds on building HS2, which is probably going to make our trains about 3% faster. But considering our trains never arrive on time anyway, this is going to render this project a complete fucking waste of money. Wankers. They're also going to spend £500 million fixing potholes. I don't see how it can cost £500 million to fix potholes unless they're being vajazzled with gold and diamonds. Also, if they built the roads properly in the first place, they wouldn't have to spend £500 million of taxpayer money fixing them. Wankers. The budgetary changes to housing. Literally speechless. It's like someone said to Rachel Reeves, Rachel, the UK is going through one of the worst housing crises for decades, but don't worry, whatever you do, you can't make it any worse. And Rachel Reeves looked them straight in the eye and said, "Hold my beer." For example, for people that require social housing, their rents are going to go up above inflation. Again, another policy that's going to hit the poorest in our society the hardest. The price of buying a home is also going to go up as well. So if you were thinking about buying a home and you've been saving up all that money, well, guess what? That money is going into these cunts' pockets instead. This is because stamp duty, which is a tax you pay when buying a home, is going up by 66%. Not only that, but they're also lowering the threshold at which you start paying stamp duty. Normally, you don't pay stamp duty on the first £250,000 of a house, but this is getting chopped in half, so you'll now have to start paying it after 125 grand. Those thoughts you had about moving to Australia are starting to sound a little bit more appealing now, aren't they? Lastly, let's talk about the government's predictions for economic growth in the UK. The OBR has predicted that the UK economy will grow between 1 and 2% per year over the next 3 years. So not only is it going to be more expensive to live here due to all the tax hikes, but the economy is going to grow at a snail's pace as well. In fact, it's going to take longer for the UK economy to grow than it takes Joe Biden to form a coherent sentence.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to excuse me.
The problem with this is that if the UK economy is predicted to grow poorly, then other people and companies and economies aren't going to want to invest in the UK. This would mean less available cash for the UK, meaning that borrowing money becomes even more expensive. This then has a knock-on effect on things like mortgage rates, making it even more expensive for working people like you to be able to afford a home. So I don't know if you picked up on this, but I'm not particularly happy about these changes. What's worse is that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I've only discussed some of the major changes. And look, I don't want to worry you too much, but we are fucked. If you want to learn more about the autumn budget, I'd suggest reading this BBC article. It's pretty simple and straightforward, and there'll be loads of other content online as well. Also, if you've got any other questions about the autumn budget, stick them down in the comments and I'll get back to you. If you've enjoyed this video and like this sort of content, then click like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm considering doing a video on what the election of Trump means for the UK economy, so if that's something you want to see me rant about, then click subscribe. That's it from me. I'll see you in the next one.